It's time. Should we get going? You guys ready? Yeah? Very good. Cool. I'll pray for us, and then I'll kind of get into some introductory remarks, and then we'll connect with Jane. So, you guys bow your heads with me? Lord Jesus, we thank you for this day, thank you for this time, thank you for this space. God, I thank you for each of these parents here who are dedicated to make time on a Tuesday evening at 7 to come out to ignore playoff basketball or whatever may call to them at their homes. And so, God, I just pray that you bless each of them and just thank you for their investment. Thank you to the PTPF who's helping support, and just for the different parents who've collaborated with me. And thank you for Jane, too, that we can come here and learn from her. We pray for these things in your son's name. Amen. All right, so I've got a couple of opening things. First of all, CASEL. Some of you guys are like, what is CASEL? What is this thing? You may recognize the last three letters as SEL, which stands for Social Emotional Learning. There's a few, this is kind of like one of the biggest models that's research-driven around how our kids can kind of be good human beings, how they can be compassionate, how they can be self-aware and socially aware and have good relationship skills. It's a lot of sort of the soft skills we talk about, and that seems like it grabs headlines like, soft skills are more important than, certain hard skills that we've historically thought that kids needed. And so, in the end, what do we need? Well, we need a balance. We need both, right? We need kids who are smart, but we also need kids who understand people and emotions and how to get along with others well, right? And so this is a secular model. So tonight you won't see us dovetailing any verses anywhere in particular. But as Paul talks to like the Philippian church or the Thessalonian church, he talks about dwelling on good things. And as Christians, I think we can pray through all things, and I find all truth that is true and real, like to be God's truth. And so it is a secular model. And so for you, you may like that, or you may not like that. I don't know how that sits for you tonight, but I just invite you to kind of be open to that, and whatever that may mean for you. So that's a little introduction to CASEL. There will be 5 categories. Jane will cover 2 of them, then we'll have a 10-minute discussion. I'll cover 2 of them, then we'll have a 10-minute discussion, and then Jane will cover 1 of them, and then we'll have a 10-minute discussion. As we're going, this is a pretty casual environment. We're really hoping you guys connect and socialize and talk with each other. There is food in the back. It is not cut off. Feel free to go back and reload if you'd like some more treats.
Nearest bathroom, CJ, where's the nearest?
Oh, nearest restroom. I believe it's in the far, Mr. Okikocha? It's at the end of the hall to the left, in there. Yeah, nearest restroom, end of the hall to the left. That's excellent housekeeping, though. Thank you. So with that, I just wanted to introduce myself just briefly. My name's CJ Clark. I'm trained more as a pastor, and I've worked here as a counselor and a Bible teacher in a few different capacities. This is Jane Bahou. I have my kids at this school. They're little, though. I'm yet to tread the territory you all have. I've got a 2.5-year-old named Francis. We've got a 5-year-old named Sadie, and Cohen will be 7, our son. He'll be 7 in June. Jane is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She's worked in the field for 20 years as a school counselor, or as a clinician, school clinician?
Sure.
Counselor? Okay.
Yeah.
You could squabble about titles, but
Yeah.
Jane's awesome. And so I've had the good fortune of working with her for the last couple of years, and she's just really gifted at working with students, has been around the block and understands kind of the different dynamics and understands people well. So we're really fortunate to have her at Valley. And she has 2 sons of her own. She's got a freshman and a senior. And so she's been through the junior high gauntlet as well, or middle school gauntlet as well, and is someone who's not only got expertise in that path, but has walked it personally as well. And so she's a great resource for us. So it's kind of a brief overview of where we're going. Kind of an idea that I wanted to drop on you guys is this idea of a train. There was a lesson that I've used in a different curriculum, and it talks a little bit about decision making as a train. And junior hires are funny. Sometimes it's like I mean, adults can be funny too, right? I don't want to be too hard on junior hires or young people, but sometimes they can really wear their emotions on the sleeve. And you'll see a young person make a decision because they're angry, right? And as adults, we see that, we go, ooh, yeah, you're gonna let your emotions drive the train there. Probably not gonna be good, right? Or sometimes I'm doing everything that she's doing. And so I'm going to let her drive the train, and it's like, ooh, that's kind of terrifying to think about for your life, right? Is she thinking of you as she's making decisions that you've decided to just connect with and go with? And so tonight we want to talk about like a healthy model. We want to think about like, what are my culture's values? What do I value? What is the information? What is the data? We want to have a train in order. It's kind of the model we're going after. We want to lead it with our minds and with thinking and with connecting with others and getting input. Now, as we're a Christian school, we say, and prayer and seeking the truth, God's truth. And so that train is kind of the picture that as we go through each of these topics, I want you to think, how is this going to link with the other things? And if my child has got them all linked up well, how well could they make decisions, right? And I know as I think of my own kids, my daughter's pretty self-aware of her emotions, and my son is not. And so for them to grow as decision makers, I feel like I've got to help Cohen go on that journey of like understanding his emotions and himself. And I've got to help Sadie grow in other ways, right? So for you, if you've come here and you've got multiple children, maybe different things are needed for each one for them to develop as healthy decision makers. So without any further ado, I present to you Jane Bahou.
Thank you, CJ.
Yeah.
Okay, so I am going to do basic overviews of the building blocks, and then we're going to do a greater discussion about raising responsible decision makers. So these kinds of things, right, you already know this. It's not like you don't know what self-awareness is, right? So I'm not going to go over everything. I'm just going to highlight a few things that you might want to know for your junior hires, or that'll really kind of hit home. We hope that you have some takeaways tonight, even if it's just a few nuggets, right? And we did tell you 8 o'clock, so I'm going to try to keep it brief but helpful. And it just so happens, CJ was talking about, I noticed that what I consider the Christian therapist, like the verse that I take to heart is be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So that just happens to be in this room, which is kind of cool. Okay, but before we get started, I just want to do okay, you can relax into the junior high, right? They're not going to be 25 and still have the cycles of the up and down emotions, right? They're not going to think in the same way. They're going to attain the skills that you need them to attain. Like they're going to figure out how to drive that train. And right now, they're in training. And we as parents are in training too, right? We're just trying to follow this train around, figuring out how to steer it in the right direction. But I thought it would be kind of fun just to set the scene with some silliness, because this will solidify in your minds that your kids are not going to think the way that they do now when they're older, okay? So here's some quotes from actual junior hires' diaries, okay? All right, number 1, wake up. Number 2, get dressed. Number 3, stay mad at mom. Number 4, eat breakfast. Today I met Randy. Big changes are happening. I'm moving to a new lunch table. I went to a Jonas Brothers concert and found out that there are only 3 of them and 20 million girls that like them. I don't know what my purpose in life is. These are real, okay? Megan is no longer my friend. I do not care if she's the only person who has a trampoline that we go to every time that I'm at her house. She said my nightlight is for babies. I actually hate her. Today was mega hype. Had bomb popsicles, watched NASCAR, and ate muffins. I'm grounded to my room for 20 minutes. That is forever. I'm going to die. Dear diary, I hope you had a good day today. Well, good for you, because I didn't. I forgot to water my neighbor's plants. They still paid me. If you're reading this, I'm probably in jail. Right? Okay, so they're gonna grow out of this. And it's fun to look back at it, and I don't mean to pick at junior hires, right? They're in such a cool phase in life where they're like transitioning out of childhood, and we as parents are saying goodbye, right? To that playful, the Barbies are getting put away, there's fewer Lego towers being built, right? They're not going to the playground as much. They're focusing more on their peers than their parents, right? So for us, it's a major transition period too, but boy, oh boy, is this one short, right? This is the shortest one in life. Like after this, adolescence, we say, goes from 13 years old to 25, right? It's a long period of time. So just as parents to keep in mind that this particular section in life is brief. Okay, so I want to highlight some things, that are normal in terms of them developing some sense of self-awareness, right, in this stage in life. Okay, so when we talk about self-awareness, one of the things that therapists always hone in on, right, is their emotions and being able to name your emotions. And that is a really important skill, and we as parents have to guide our kids to help them to indicate what they might be feeling. But in junior high, it is normal. It's so normal for emotions to be up and down. Okay, so if 1 minute your kid is like crying and saying like, nobody likes me, I don't have any friends, and then 10 minutes later they're getting texted to play Minecraft and they're having the time of their life, that is so normal. Okay, so cycle of emotion is normal. What we want to really pay attention to is anything where you feel like your kid is stuck. Okay, and then the next thing I'm going to highlight in terms of stuckness is a fixed mindset. And I'm sure many of you know, right, like what a growth mindset is and what a fixed mindset is. And typically with a fixed mindset, I mean, normally across the board, right, a fixed mindset is to specific things, like I can't do math, right? It's like this one aspect of life, an important aspect of life, right? But they're feeling like they're limited in this aspect. If you feel like your child is stuck in multiple areas or is saying things that are what we would, as a therapist, I would consider shame-based, like I can't do things right, or I always make mistakes. Okay, those are the things that you as a parent want to pay attention to as possible red flags, right? Are they saying overarching things about themselves, or are they saying things about like, hey, about this thing I'm not really doing so hot with, and I need your guidance, I need your help, I need to figure out how to get better at this. And as parents, I'm going to talk about later about how to help guide your child if they're having what we would consider a fixed mindset. Does that make sense? Okay. Oh gosh, guys. Okay. Yay. Okay, so I just want to highlight, okay, so when we foster self-awareness, I'm sure you all realize that this is what helps us to gain confidence, pride in our abilities, you feel confident and productive, and then of course, we're always discovering more about ourselves, right? In my middle age, I'm discovering more about myself. So when I'm 70, I'm gonna discover more about myself. We never get that part done, right? So this is part of the train, right? It just keeps on chugging along. And so it's not like they're going to attain, or we ever attain self-awareness, right? It just keeps on going. But if there is like a shame-based paradigm that you're noticing with your kid, just check in about any sort of criticism that you're hearing from them that you might be saying. When they hear repeated criticism or interpret things as criticism, that oftentimes hinders their growth, right? So we just want to be aware of that. And then we have these slides, okay, that at the end there's going to be a QR code that you can just access these slides. So I'm not going to go over everything like I said. So the next thing is how can they foster self-awareness themselves, right? And then what I really want to talk about is you as parents, us as parents, what is really helpful in developing self-awareness in our children. So the first thing is the age-old modeling, right? We have to be on our best behavior, right, in terms of our children. And when we do make mistakes, own up to that and say like, hey, I know I was really upset earlier and I yelled at you, and I want to backtrack about that and apologize and make it up to you or whatever, right? Like you own it and then you repair it in some way. And one of the things that oftentimes as parents that we do is we ask questions that are very kind of limiting. So if your child is talking to you and they're trying to explore something, whether that be about themselves or about their abilities or their soccer team or whatever, using phrases like, tell me about, instead of a direct question, tell me more about that, right? Instead of saying like, well, what was that like for you, right? Tell me more about that. Is really like an open, tell me what that was like for you, instead of a question. Kids oftentimes, for whatever reason, don't like questions. They feel like bothered by it. Do any of you have that experience? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just an open door kind of statement. Say more about what that was like for you. Say more about what you were feeling. Those are kind of open invitations for your kids. And then in terms of like the growth mindset, so if you are noticing that there is a fixed mindset about something, and this is not even just about fixed mindset, you can use this kind of phrasing anytime, and we do teach this with teachers also. If you need to highlight what your kid is doing that is displaying a growth, like they're trying something. So if they have a fixed mindset about something like math, but they did their homework anyway. Hey, I noticed that was really hard for you, but you chose to sit down and do it anyway. Like, I just noticed, you just noticed it. I see you, I see you. So that they feel encouraged by like knowing that like they're being validated for their try. So I noticed this. I noticed that you did this. I noticed that you wanted to play video games, but you knew you needed to clean your room, and you did that first. I noticed that. Instead of like the, hey, well done, you know, like a general phrase, trying to really like, I see you, I see you. And that way kids can like, what I'm really going to get at later is develop their sense of values and their own inner guidance that they're relying on, right? Because right now, in their phase of development, this is what we call, okay, does anyone know Erik Erikson? He's the stages of development in psychology. This time in their lives, they're launching out of what we call industry versus inferiority, right? So they're trying to develop this industrious sense of self. And the more that they can gain their confidence and competence and feel good about their abilities, they develop a sense of industry. However, if they sense that like if this self-criticism starts coming out and they feel like no matter what they do, they're just not getting ahead, or they have their perfectionistic, like I'm not the best, so it's not good enough, that is going to lead to a sense of inferiority. And they will kind of get stuck, like a little stuntedness in this stage. Okay, so that's another thing that we want to look out for, because next, they're going to move into their sense of identity. They're going to start asking bigger questions, and they're going to start like really navigating and advocating for themselves. And we want to make sure that they're doing that in a way that is in tune with their values and the role that they want to develop as they move forward into adulthood. So it's the next stage, just to say, is identity versus role confusion. So they're trying on different hats, like figuring out where I belong, right? This is the next stage, right? They're leaving the childhood and entering into the adolescence, and they're going to start like really honing in on this identity thing. Who am I? Where do I belong? What do I believe? And if they don't have this sense of their industriousness, and they don't feel a sense of confidence about themselves, they can get really confused in their roles. And like what CJ said, I'm going to do what this person is doing, or I saw this on TikTok and I'm just going to model that. Or, my algorithm is sending me all these anxiety things, and all of a sudden I have anxiety, right? So we want to make sure that they have their own sense of self, so that when they're moving forward into this identity, they can be like, oh, that resonates with me. Ooh, that doesn't really resonate with me. Okay. Next is social awareness. And again, these are the building blocks for responsible decision making. So in social awareness, again, I mean, you know these things, right? The one thing that I do want to point out besides this role awareness is mirror neurons. And if you're aware of mirror neurons, you know that like we have specific cells in our brains that when we see something, we tend to mimic it. And as middle schoolers, they're still in that phase in life where they're really imitating us as parents. They're imitating adults, right? And so they get their sense of understanding through imitation. They're trying on things in order to see if it fits, right? Or do I get my needs met in this way? If they're developing like in my field, if they're developing a sense of depression, and you know what, when I'm depressed, my mom tends to take more care of me, and I get out of school, right? And they seem to get like more affection and attention, right? That's the kind of thing that we need to be aware of as parents. And so back to the mirror neurons is just recognizing that, hey, they're looking at us. They're looking at what we do. I just thought of the phrase monkey see, monkey do. It's not like that, right? They're not like 3-year-olds, but it is still that understanding of like they are going to be imitating what they do. So if dad blows a gasket a lot, they see that, they might be trying on that hat. Or be like, I don't like anger at all, and I don't like conflict, and so my emotions, I push down. Okay. Obviously, benefits of social awareness: improve relationships, conflict resolution, able to problem solve, appreciate variety. What you can do as parents to help foster social awareness is active listening. And oftentimes as adults, I'm sure you know what this feels like, is when your kid is talking and that answer is starting to, or that question, the next thing you want to say is bubbling up inside of you, right? So instead of saying something like, it sounds like you were really upset when that happened, we're like, well, that seems like a rude thing to do, right? You know, that's the thing we want to say, like, wow, why did you do that? You know, those are the things that are, you know, like steaming up inside of us. But we need to backtrack and say, like, okay, I'm listening to you, and I'm going to reflect to you what I'm hearing. So it sounds like, instead of a question. Again, modeling conflict, that kind of conflict resolution. And at this stage, they're starting to really interpret facial expressions and getting feedback in that way. Language, that kind of thing. Okay, I'm going to talk about social media because I know that's really, it's a hot topic, right? Social media is really hard to navigate as parents. And just in terms of like responsible decision making, I wanted to bring these questions to the fore, okay? Things that they can ask themselves if they're the kind of kid that's like, okay, they have a reflection ability. This might be an after the fact kind of question that you end up asking your kids, but would it be okay if my parents or my grandparents saw this? Could someone get in trouble? Would this start drama? What would my friends think? Can everyone see this? In a year, will I feel good about this? So this is the stop and think kind of method that we'll talk about later. But this is in terms of social media. We, you know, obviously a lot of times they're just like scrolling through stuff. What do they call it? Doom scrolling or whatever. And they're just responding to their friends or whatnot. But we have had some situations on campus where things have blown up because things have been posted, not just about like other people and kids saying things that are that have escalated to a point where feelings got hurt and whatnot. But as they get older in the high school era, we've definitely had some posting about hurting themselves or doing something that is not in line with Valley values, that sort of thing. So those are the kinds of things where it's like, okay, if you would have asked yourself these questions before, perhaps it would have benefited you. Okay, so discussion number 1. Are you guys all okay? Yeah? Are you okay? Okay. Feel free to like mingle about the room if you would like to discuss amongst each other or turn around in your tables, however you want to do that. Feel free to get more food or drinks or whatnot. But you may choose whatever resonates most with you in terms of like what you want to talk about with your table partner or the people that you choose to talk to. But it's really about like you as a parent. I feel like that's what you want for this focus, right? Like, what can I do as a parent? What do I want to focus on as a parent in this middle phase of life?
So yeah, so turn to your neighbors or whomever's around you, and you guys can talk, let's say for the next 7 minutes or so. We're a little bit behind schedule, so we'll just say 7 minutes, discuss those questions on the board. Kids don't talk out, they'll act out, right? And so
Right.
sometimes that's really obvious, and sometimes it's not so obvious. But it's funny, I feel like we were talking to the back, and we talked about how sometimes kids will struggle to manage their emotions, and sometimes we as adults will struggle to manage our emotions as well. So wouldn't you know it, the next category is self-management. And so I'll have a more brief treatment of this here, but basically science has a lot to say about how we manage our emotions thanks to the fMRI machine. And there's like a newer kind of psychological input called dialectical behavioral therapy, which is really focused on sort of these like biohacks and things we can do to help manage our emotions. And so like neuroscience would basically say it's like if you're acting out of these base, strong responses, it's kind of the more base and animalistic kind of ways of responding. So what you want to do is get into a higher order, headspace where you're thinking more and you're in this less reactive space. You can literally use certain things such as, where am I at here? Sorry, am I behind? Oh, there we go. I was like, I'm on the wrong slide. You can use certain things like breathing exercises, and there's a cool sheet that I'll use with a lot of the kids at our school, and it's talking about tips. So basically, it's like muscle relaxation skills, and there's even a process that you can use to like put a bunch of cold water in a sink or take literally a cold shower, and it triggers your biological response to slow down your heart rate. And so doing things like breathing exercises for the first, like say 90 seconds after a stressful event can really help you metabolize those feelings moving forward. That first 90 seconds is critical. And so so that's awesome. Another great skill is mindfulness, and if you're a Christian, there's something called centering prayer that I'd be happy to share with you if you're interested in that. But the Christian church has a lot of history around sort of like silent prayer, which really mirrors a lot of like modern mindfulness, secular practices that you may have seen, or different religious practices around mindfulness. Dr. Daniel Siegel is an amazing
neuropsychobiologist.
Yeah, that. He's one of those. And he's coined, I think he's coined the term, right? I don't even know. But name it to tame it. It's kind of this idea that if I can name what's going on, it will help me metabolize it and kind of move through it and forward. Also, too, a massive thing that really helps kids emotionally regulate is pets. We're talking about the cats going scattering. There's pretty strong rates that this is actually super soothing for kids, like to get a cat or a dog, and not to say go rush out and get a bunch of animals. I think that already happened in the pandemic, but pets really do help kids calm down. Another big thing that you all probably are aware of already is routines. Like kids who have routines, or if you're ever finding yourself in a really challenging portion of the day, it's like, why is it at 6 p.m. every night we're like not able to get the homework done, or we're not able to do that thing we need to do? To kind of sit down with them and try and figure out a routine or a way to try and navigate it can be a really good thing to do. Hard to do on the fly, right? But to establish routines really do help soothe and calm your children down. I kind of jumped the gun on the whole 90-second thing, but that first 90 seconds in response is huge. If kids feel like they're in control and they're able to navigate it, it's good. However, if that first 90 seconds gets really rocky, you may see some really big emotions from your child. So kind of that initial little window, if we can tap in right there and help them breathe or help them find some skills that they can navigate, that's a big win. And then too, if it's modeled at home, hopefully then they're there at school, they're able to kind of like do this, or they show up. Some kids will come into my office sometimes as a wellness counselor, and I just need to breathe. And I'm like, whoa, cool, good job, kid. Like you have a sense of what you need right now, and you clearly don't feel good. That's pretty cool. Like you're in a good spot. And that kid usually kind of is able to get back on the horse pretty quick and back to class. Some good ways to help your kids now think about self-management, or like a strategy to get there, is to plan. Well, I'm sorry, I'm calling this self-management. Yes, I am. Okay. Is to plan something, anything. If you want to, so the first part was kind of more talking about emotions. Now this is just talking about how do we help manage life skills, like how do we plan an event, how do we do anything. If you're like, man, my kid needs help with self-management or managing themselves, plan anything. Their next birthday party, have them help plan it. We're gonna have friends over, what do we want to do? Start talking through it. And then you can kind of debrief it on the back end. well, at the end, this is going to look like this. Is that what we want? You could start even doing things like starting SMART goals if your kid really needs some more tangible skills around these things. But invite them, put them in the driver's seat. You want to be smart about that. Right? You don't want them to fail too hard, but that can be fun, and it could be a good way for them to kind of like have a little bit of authority or a little bit of power in a situation and try and develop their own skills to manage situations. All right, the next is relationship skills, and this one's pretty brief. Basically, kids are fortunately already, and if your kids are here, right, they're at school all day. They're already developing and working through different, social environments. We really encourage project-based learning in a lot of our classes, and so kids have to sit, kind of like we are tonight, in small groups, talking, processing, and it's a really healthy way to go. But if you feel like your kid needs work on this, get them involved in additional opportunities to connect with their peers, whether that's sports, theater, music, robotics, church, volunteering somewhere. And two, in the home, I think that can look like different games and activities, like spend time with them, talk with them, and then later debrief, hear about it. How did it go? We can practice the art of challenging conversations too, because frequently relationships will put you in weird situations. Well, she said this to her and now I'm here. What do I say? What do I do? Ooh, okay, let's talk it through. Here's what I'd say. Does that fit for you? No. Okay. So role play with them. Invite them into that challenging conversation. Something I wasn't going to say to you guys, but I think it's super helpful is my wife and I have had ChatGPT write awkward texts for us. Like our neighbor has been parking their boat in this really awkward spot. We're like, how do we say that? And so we've been actually like telling ChatGPT, okay, neighbor's been doing this, what do we do? And we get what's that, and we're like, yeah, I think I'd say something like that. So even using AI to have some of these conversations is not a horrible strategy. I mean, I wouldn't just like send it wholesale, but like put it in, see what it gives you. And it's like, does that fit for me? Does that fit my values and how I navigate it? Because some of these things are just so hard to say. Some social situations are so awkward, you just feel so stuck. But these are some great reflection questions as you're talking to your child. Say you plan a party. Say they did something. But yeah, did we reach our goal? Why? Why did we reach our goal? How did I feel on that team? Hey, you're on the soccer team for the first time. You're on the golf team for the first time. What was that like for you? Oh, well, I wasn't the captain, and I really wanted to be the captain. Okay, you want to be the captain? Interesting. Oh, good to know. What was your participation like? Okay, well, why do you say that? So Jane has alluded to sometimes kids can be allergic to questions though too. So it may not be so structured as this. Some kids are probably going to be more open to that kind of structure, some won't be. But so explore relationships with them. So we release you now. Again, we're running a little tight on time.
Yeah, actually, okay, so
5 minutes here?
Can we keep you? Okay, how about this? If you're willing to stay past 8, because we are definitely going to run past 8, feel free to stay. If we will not be offended if you leave.
Yeah.
But I would like it if you do leave. We're going to send the slides. If you could do the survey at the end to help us navigate next year and what you do want. And more timeliness, or whatever you can put that on. But would you rather discuss now, or do you want me to go over responsible decision making and then discuss? Okay, and then we'll go back to discussions?
Sure.
Okay, I do want to say one thing about what CJ said in terms of emotion. If your kid is having big emotion, sometimes we do tend to get them to calm down immediately, like we want them to breathe or do the mindfulness kind of stuff. But it's really important when they're having big emotion that there is some sort of movement, because that is a lot of energy. Like anger and anxiety have a lot of energy inside them, right? So if you try to get them to calm down, they're not going to kick into the rest and digest after we have big emotion, right? There's rest and digest. And they're not going to kick into that. They're going to go into like a numb kind of state. Okay, so what you want to do is use up that energy. So sometimes with kids, and if they're already crying or like throwing things, then they're getting out their own energy. But if you need to facilitate something, like with students who need to calm down in some way, like I'll have them like squeeze every muscle in their body and then relax, and then squeeze every muscle in their body and then relax. Or they can do something in the room. They can stomp their feet or go like this, right? But they need to do something to get out that energy, because it's not a normal human response to have big emotion and then to calm down. So that's just a tip. Okay. Okay, so let's go into responsible decision making. I'm going to give you a scenario real quick. Okay, so this is like a model for guiding kids into responsible decision making. And if you have it, if you want to use this exact model, you can just print it out and use it with your kid and go over it with them, because they might need some guidance in doing this. Some are really like it's just natural to them. But younger kids or kids who are on the more immature side, they'll need some time, or they'll need some guidance to go through this. Okay, say they didn't do a homework assignment, like a bigger homework assignment. Okay, so that's the problem. And they go, okay, so I'm typically a really hardworking kid, but I did procrastinate. I know I can do the work, and I value hard work and honesty. And I like my Bible class, but I really don't care that much about church history. Okay, so that's the problem, right? They didn't do their work. And then they go, okay, well, what can I do? Like, it's due tomorrow. So I can ask for an extension, I can have my parents help me, I can stay up late, I can cheat. Like, these are my options, right? There might be more options. But then they gather information about that. Okay, so what would that mean? And then they go through the pros and cons. Okay, so like, if I ask for an extension, like maybe my teacher would get mad at me, and I get uncomfortable when people get mad at me, but he tends to be a pretty like forgiving person, so I guess I could do that. Could ask my parents, but then I'd have to admit that I didn't do this assignment, and but they might be cool about it. And actually, Dad kind of likes church history, so maybe I could ask Dad to help me through this, and I could stay up late. I mean, I just tell my parents that I need to stay up late, and I'd rather just get this done. I don't want to ask for an extension, right? So they go through like the pros and cons of this, and then select the best option. Okay, so maybe asking a parent for help is the best option, and then they develop a plan, right? So it's like a targeted way of gearing your thoughts in a more directive and organized way. Okay, so that's kind of like a layout. Now, as parents, I wanted to talk in really maybe more precise terms, something that you can do if you are feeling like you need to assist your kid in making a decision. Something like they want to go somewhere, and you're like, I'm not sure I'm really into you going somewhere, doing that thing. Okay, so setting some sort of parameters is something that makes it really easy for us as parents. Okay, maybe easy is a strong word, but helpful. Okay, so something like, okay, you want to go to the movies, but you need to clean your room. So you have two options. You really are going to emphasize choice. You're making a choice, okay? So you have two options. You can clean your room and go to the movies, or you can choose not to clean your room and not go to the movies. Okay, so I'm really trying to be clear here. If you choose to clean your room, you're choosing to go to the movies. If you're choosing not to clean your room, you're choosing not to go to the movies. Does that make sense? So you're trying to hone in on helping them to make a responsible decision based on your values. Okay, so maybe you have a value of cleanliness, and that's important to you. Like, you want the house to be clean. It's important to you that they develop a sense of like taking care of their belongings. So you're trying to guide this decision by helping them to see a value. Does that make sense? Okay, and so they're going to take that decision and probably be take that option and be annoyed with it maybe. But you as a parent have created a container that they need to fall within. You've created this container, and that's the boundary. That's the deal, dude. Right? The thing about the value, right, is like as parents, we want to instill values in our children, and I'm going to give you a list of 250 values that you can peruse. But you might be like, it's important to me that you keep your room clean, but they might be ingesting that value as conscientiousness or consideration for my belongings. Right? Okay, so they might not get on the cleanliness train in the same way that you're trying to impart the value. So I'm saying like this might come up again because they might not be caring about the cleanliness thing. That's what you care about. But it doesn't matter because you're still instilling a value. Does that make sense? But they might, it it might be a different value for them, but that's okay. Because we don't all have the same values. So for whatever reason, some of us have, like some are more in the prioritized zone than others. And so your kid might be interpreting it different than you, but you're still imparting a value. Okay. And then as far as like the, like just parent toolbox kind of stuff, one of the things that I really think is fantastic, and especially as your kids get older, is really honoring of them. Because sometimes it's hard for kids to come to us and say what they need to say, or like they have a problem, and or maybe they've done something, they've made a mistake, and they value you so much, but they don't know how to tell you. The I need to tell you something box is a beautiful way to kind of bridge that gap. So you just create a box, and it has like some index cards next to it, and they, instead of coming to you, right, like it's kind of scary, maybe, to admit that they've done this, like they didn't do their homework assignment, or they got an F, or whatever it is, they made a mistake, they lied about something maybe, right? They can put that in the I need to tell you something box, and then you look in that box periodically and then discuss that with them. This is them coming to you and saying like, hey, I want to talk to you about something, but it's kind of scary for me to like out myself altogether. Yeah. So that's just kind of an aside, but I wanted to throw that in there because I feel like it's a helpful like caveat for parents. Another question that I really, like, even as a therapist, I oftentimes ask students, especially at this age, is this going to be helpful, hurtful, or neutral? So just asking them that question, is this going to be helpful or hurtful? And then again, you're like honing it in, kind of narrowing it down for them, because kids are much more wise than we give them credit for. And they really do have like a sense of innate wisdom that we need to draw out of them. And your kids surprise you sometimes, right? And so drawing that out of them is something that we get to do as parents. So allowing them those opportunities for their wisdom to shine. And so when asking a question like, is this going to be helpful or hurtful, or kind of neutral, I think they'll surprise you with their answers, because they'll know, right? They know. Yeah. Okay, here's the values, right? And sometimes with I mean, I wouldn't give this to a middle schooler, but sometimes in therapy we do this, right? Like to figure out, what do I value? And values help guide decisions. One thing that I do want to say, okay, it is 8 o'clock if anyone needs to go, but one thing I do want to say about the difference between values and goals, okay? So a goal is, there's a story, okay, I'm going to tell you the story. A goal is something like a family wants to go to Disneyland. And so they're all in the car together, and one kid is just like, all I care about is getting to Disneyland. And the other kid is like, I am really going to enjoy the journey. I'm not saying they're saying this consciously, but along the way, this kid is like playing a game with it. You know, they're playing trivia or whatever, 20 questions along the way, and they're like, wow, look at the scenery. Hey, check out that sunset. You know, like they're enjoying their time. They're reading their book. They're enjoying the journey. And the other kid is like, oh my gosh, how much longer? Like, are we there yet? That kind of thing. Like, all I care about is the goal. That kid is not developing their values along the way. Where this kid is just like, I value curiosity and exploration and connection, togetherness, right? They are emphasizing their values as they go. So if you have a kid that's very goal-oriented, like, I care about the A, but it's not because they value learning, or they love the content of the class and they just want to learn more about it, or they like how in that class, like, they get to connect with friends and do a lot of group work. If all they care about is the A, then they're a very goal-oriented person. And it's going to cause them frustrations if they're not making decisions out of their heart and their core. They're making decisions out of the end point and not the journey along the way. Okay. Yay, okay, it is 8 o'clock. Woo, sped through. Okay, so I'm gonna go back also to the other questions that CJ had. And if you want to stay and discuss amongst each other and get some more treats and whatnot, you're welcome to do that. If you feel like you want to go before we put the QR code for the survey, then we'll just do it when we send it out. We'd really appreciate it if you do the survey regardless, though. Okay, do you want to discuss amongst yourselves? You had such lively conversations before. That's probably got more out of that than anything else.